Hey everybody, today I'm talking about the 10 board games that made me fall in love with this great hobby. So these are all games that I played very early in my kind of journey into board gaming. Some of them I still play now, some of them I don't, but still they all played a big part of me wanting to come back for more and introduce me to kind of new concepts and new ideas that I didn't think were possible. But before I get started on these 10 games, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer. And if you use the link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. At number 10, I have Battle Line, which is a game I still own and still love. Now, this is a hand management, card game where you are trying to compete over these different flags. You've got, I believe, 9 flags. You're trying to either control 5 of them, as in the majority, or control 3 adjacent flags. And the way you control them is by playing 3 card poker hands. And at all times you have a hand of 7 cards. You're going to simply play a card and you're going to replenish your hand. So you are kind of drip fed the information that you can play against these flags at all time. And this game puts you under a bit of pressure by forcing you sometimes to bite off more than you can chew, because you might have, say, the 8 and the 9 in orange, but you're not quite sure if you'll ever get that 7. So you're leaving your options short if you commit to that particular suit or particular hand of cards too early, because if you don't have the card, the chances are that your opponent will have that card. It's got great hand management skills, great kind of a tempo to it, and it really did always satisfy that itch for me to think, or really put me on that spot of, do I want to play it safe? Do I want to take these big gambles and go all in on a certain flags, knowing when to counteract my opponent? And sometimes it forces you to self-sabotage because you want to leave your other options open. It's a very clever game, and I still love it. So that is Battle Line at number 10. At number 9, I have Lords of Waterdeep, which I think if you joined the hobby around the same time I did, I think this would probably be on your list as well, because this game was very much at the forefront of these kind of lightweight Eurocentric games, and it did introduce me to the worker placement mechanism where you have your pawns and you are placing them on certain spots on the board to get a particular action, and if you go there, it means your opponent cannot go there. So it did have this real sense of urgency, and it forced you to prioritize taking certain actions. The game itself is super simple, just collect different resource blocks and trade them in against contracts. But I think the additional twist of having new buildings pop up on the board and even take ownership of those buildings, that really did, I found that very satisfying. I think the game got out of its own way in terms of remaining simple and true to itself, but having just enough going on to keep you coming back. And I've certainly got a lot of plays of this game under my belt. Now, I do think, especially now when there are hundreds of worker placement games out there, I think this one has kind of fallen to the wayside. I don't really have any desire to play it at all because I played richer games. But I don't want to understate the importance and the significance this game had in really gripping me into the hobby and more into the Euro side of gaming. So that is Lords of Waterdeep at number 9. At number 8, I have Deception Murder in Hong Kong. Now, this game is still immensely popular, but there was a period where this game really blew up, and that's when I started getting into this kind of social deduction, kind of murder mystery style game, as you have a kind of a scientist who's trying to give clues to all of the kind of police officers, but amongst those officers there is a murderer. And basically every player is going to have a bunch of these kind of weapons and motives in front of them, and it's up to the scientist to try and use these kind of clue tiles to try and almost sign or point in a certain direction as to who the murderer could be. So did the murdered party, did they have blunt force trauma to the head? If so, they'd probably want to point towards the person with the hammer, for example. So it's very clever and a good kind of hybrid of kind of tangible deduction as well as just that social deduction puzzle. I thought this game bleeds those two feelings of the game together quite well. And I just found the whole thing fascinating. I like playing either way. I like playing the scientist. I like playing the murderer, as well as being the people who guessed who the murderer would be. Very fun. Again, I still see this one very highly touted. It seems a lot of people have bypassed it or come through this game at some point and kind of latched onto it as one of the best social deduction games out there. And I, for one, was a huge fan of it. I've called on it slightly now, maybe because I've played this to death, but I certainly wouldn't turn down a game that is Deception, Murder in Hong Kong. At number 7, I have one of the first games that I ever played in the modern sphere of board gaming. This is Kassan. So again, I'm sure if you watch this video, you would have played Kassan, one of the first tile placement games there was. And just that idea of building the board as you went, I thought that was completely mind-blowing. I'd never seen that before at the time. So easy and breezy to play, a lot of fun, and definitely a mass appealing style game where whoever I played this with, within a few turns, they're like, yeah, I like this. And just, it almost has this kind of therapeutic and relaxing and charm to this game that's obviously made it such a clear evergreen in the board game kind of sphere. So I don't really need to say much more. I think we've probably all had that point where we've been enamoured by the tile placement aspect of Kassan. I've been quite some time since I played this one, but I did go through a period of kind of getting all the expansions and upping the ante in terms of the complexity and all the different things going on. And still, it's a game I wouldn't really be objective to play. I think it's a really cool game still. Maybe the decision space isn't quite there for me now, but still, it played one of the most important parts of my kind of, giving me the board game bug, because again, I think this probably was in the first maybe 3 games that I picked up in terms of modern board gaming, and it's certainly got a lot of plays out of me. So that is Kassan at number 7. At number 6, I have a game I seem to be talking a lot about recently. This is Lord of the Rings, the living card game. So this is a cooperative kind of a hand management style game, as you are constructing a deck of cards of these famous Lord of the Rings characters, trying to overcome these variable scenarios, fighting off enemies, completing missions, all this style of thing. So first off, I don't think I played a cooperative game before this one. I think I played this before I played Pandemic, actually. So just the idea of working with my friends to overcome these scenarios was a really cool novel concept to me. I ended up picking up 2 copies of the base game so that we could all play 4 players. We went through a lot of the scenarios. I ended up getting like all the ring binders so I could keep all my characters and cards very easily accessible. So this was one of the first games I did kind of a deep dive in, and almost became a lifestyle game to me, as we'd meet up and play this game once or twice a week. So I don't really do that thing now. I don't really do lifestyle gaming. I tend to dive in and dive out of games very quickly, and I'm more kind of Eurocentric. But this game really did grab my attention. Again, I love the IP anyway. I love Tolkien's work. And this game, mechanically rock solid. I'd still happily play it now, and I still regularly actually tout how good this game is if you like cooperative games and if you want a lifestyle game. But it doesn't quite fit my taste now, but I still think it's objectively a very good game. And again, it played a huge part in me. It took a lot of my time, in fact, all those years ago when I was really diving deep into Lord of the Rings, the living card game. At number 5, I have The Castles of Mad King Ludvig. So after playing games like Carcassonne, of course I wanted to do a little bit more digging, see what else was out there in terms of tile placement. And that's when I came across The Castles of Mad King Ludvig, which was one of my favourite games for a long time, actually. Maybe a game I've got a little bit fatigued with now, but I still think it's a really cool idea, and I love castles. So this game, you are trying to build these weird and wacky castles, trying to score points by putting certain rooms next to other rooms, and trying to cater to the king's wants, because every game they're going to be different on what the king wants. You might score X amount of points for every one of these rooms you have, and so on. I still like it, the master builder mechanism here, where each turn there's going to be a master builder and they're going to set the price on these tiles that are going to be new rooms for the castles. The more expensive they are, the other players, if they choose to pay it, that money is going to go to the master builder. But at the same time, you only have the option of buying things at the price you set. So you need to be very careful, meticulous about not setting the prices too low so that your opponent buys the tiles that you want. but at the same time, you don't want to set them too high, so you don't want to pay too much for yourself. So really interesting game in terms of cash flow, and again, I love the different shapes and the different buildings you can build with this one. Again, still going strong. I know this one got a super deluxe version semi-recently, and there still seems to be a lot of people playing it and enjoying it, and I can see why. So that is The Castles of Mad King Ludvig at number 5. At number 4, I have For Sale. Now, I think this was the first filler game that I ever bought, and it is still probably my favourite filler game of all time. So this wonderful, timeless evergreen of a design is a simple auction style game as you're bidding for these properties, having a very fixed amount of cash. And then once you've acquired a bunch of property, in the second half of the game, you're going to be trading in these properties in a kind of blind bidding system in order to collect these checks. And whoever plays the highest building or the highest value building will collect the highest check. Whoever plays the lowest value building will collect the lowest value check. And I love the layers of the gameplay that just unraveled the more and more I play this one, thinking, maybe I can do quite well even with just low value buildings, because of course the checks are going to come out in a random denominations. I can get quite good bang for my buck even by playing those low properties at time and holding on to my money. Again, an onion of a game in my opinion. It's still one of the best auction games ever and one of the best games ever. And this was played a huge part in my board gaming life, and I think it still remains my most played game of all time. That's how much I love For Sale. So that is For Sale at number 4. At number 3, I have Legendary, a Marvel deck building game. So this was actually the first hobby board game that I bought all those years ago. I grew up being a Marvel fan. I've got thousands of comics in my collection. I'm always massively immersed in the kind of Marvel universe before the MCU or anything like that. And when I saw this board game pop up as I was just in some kind of casual store, I just picked this one up thinking, that box cover looked really cool, and there's no going back from there really. So I ended up trying to collect all the expansions. I think at one point I had like 20 expansions with all the different superheroes, all the villains, all the scenarios, and I just love that idea of being able to tailor make whatever scenario I wanted with any character I wanted. This is probably the most replayable game in terms of variation there is out there. I was kind of mind blown with how kind of board game mechanisms and thematic ties could work. For example, when you come across a character like Hulk, and the more he gets hit, the stronger he gets, or like Wolverine could heal himself, Mystique could copycat other characters, all these things. I thought, wow, the potential and the cleverness of how the designers have put those two things together was just like really fascinating to me. Now, funny enough, the more I play board gaming, or different board games, the less kind of focused I was on deck building, because deck building is of course the main mechanism in Legendary, but it actually isn't one of my favourite mechanisms, or anywhere near one of my favourite mechanisms. And this one, I've played this game probably 60, 70 times. I remember every Friday night I used to take this around my friend's house. We'd all play a game of Legendary with a different scenario, trying to go through all of the different masterminds in order. We got quite far, and if we'd lose characters or we'd lose the game, we'd take those characters out of the mix so we couldn't use them again. So we tried to put a little bit of almost like a legacy game into the feeling of Legendary. But still, a game that I had a really good time with. I don't have it anymore because it did become very cumbersome and overwhelming in terms of the sheer amount of content. But still, I did have a really good time playing Legendary. So that is Legendary, a Marvel deck building game, at number 3. At number 2, I have The Resistance Avalon. Now, talking about being mind blown, I don't think any game has come close to the feeling that the initial plays, or the impression that the initial plays of The Resistance Avalon had on me. I couldn't fathom how somebody could think of such a genius concept and something that you could play at home with your friends with so much kind of deception and intrigue and kind of deduction and just a really rich social experiment, really. So this one was one of the games that put the social deduction genre on the map, really. You know, as you have a secret team of bad guys and good guys, you're voting who goes on these quests. You can vote to put these quests as passes, or if you're a bad guy, you can put a fail in the mix. And it's all about trying to weed out who those bad guys are, trying to pin the blame on other players, and so on. I just love the social dynamics that can go into this one, and it just had me just really salivating to play it as much as possible, playing it with bigger groups, introducing new characters to try and really throw the dynamic off. I just thought this game is so rich in terms of the layers and all the different potential of deception. I still feel that way. Now, sadly, I don't get to play at higher player counts very often anymore, but if I had, say, regularly, 6 or more players at games night, I would go out of my way to make sure this game gets played. It's still in my collection. Sadly, I can't remember the last time I played it, but I will never, ever get rid of the Resistance Avalon because I have so many fond memories of playing this one, and it is almost nostalgic to me now, or sentimental to me, I should say. So that is the Resistance Avalon at number 2. And finally, at number 1, I have Zulin, the Mayan calendar, which I believe was the first ever Euro strategy game that I played, at least in a pure aspect. And I think I played this one before I played Lords of Waterdeep, because I remember going around a friend's house, they taught this to me, and I was like, wow, I could not believe that someone had the brain capacity of making a game like this, where you had to time things perfectly in terms of getting resources and putting workers on and off the board. With that gear system, it still impresses me, but back then I was like, wow, what is this? I just couldn't get enough of it. I remember after that initial teach, I went straight home and ordered myself a copy, and it's still in my collection right over my right shoulder here. So this one, again, this one just opened the floodgates in terms of me wanting to explore more intricate game designs, get interlocking mechanisms, and stuff like that. So I didn't even think this kind of game was even out there, or there was such a thing of these really clever and intricate Euro games. And again, the amount of games I played now is just kind of all down to me being introduced to Zulin in the first place, because that's what really made me see the potential and just the infinite limit, really, of how many great games there are out there. So that is Zulin, the Mayan calendar, at number 1. So there we have it. That concludes the video. Something a little bit different here. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you have, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to my channel, and also let me know which games made you fall in love with the hobby, because I'd love to hear that. Additionally, you can check out my my new game Thalamus, which will hopefully be up for sale very, very soon. So for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.